Facebook account, Rocstedi. We're on Twitter and YouTube and Twitch. It's all connecting. I'll wait for that last one to hit. And we're good. Okay, so welcome to the Rocstedi podcast, episode 52 with scientist Raymond Palmer. One of my favourite guests who's been on the podcast before. We thought we'd bring him up today because we're doing a live show here at the Comedy Lounge. So if you guys want to give Raymond a bit of a round of applause here. Thanks very much. Thanks for joining us today, mate. I really appreciate it. I really do love the talks that we have together all the time. So we'll bring something new to the market, and I may have to ask you one of these first people to come and do it. You know? So,
Joe, appreciate being here. Appreciate the invite. When we start a podcast, can we do it like T-minus countdown? It's like an astronaut kind of thing, get me really excited. I just saw you open the podcast there and it popped into my head, so I can share it with you.
I think something wise, I'm sure you're used to the countdowns because you always get your own space, is why you're probably doing something like this up. But mate, there's so much to talk about. It's, usually that 90 minutes or 2 hours isn't quite enough. So it's good to sort of do this regularly with you a little bit. But even since we spoke earlier in the year, there's a lot of progress going on from some of the findings in different fields with longevity, and there's a lot of information you can update us in space as well. We've got a couple of kids in the audience too, so if anyone wants to interact during the podcast, you can actually just let Penny know she's got the microphone, and she'll come over and she can get the questions from me that you can ask to Ray. Same if anyone online has a question, you can chime into my Instagram _Rocstedi and leave a message through the voice note, and I'll play for you on the show. So, mate, I don't know where you want to start today. There's such a broad range of things to talk about, so I think I'll leave it to you to pick a subject.
I think today, or this morning, it was about 5 a.m. Perth time where we were, or where we are, that the DART mission hit the moon of an asteroid, and to try and see if travelling at the velocity it was travelling, which isn't that fast in when you're talking about how fast some spacecraft can travel now, but the DART probe is travelling around 6 kilometres per second, so say from here to Casino every second. That's pretty fast.
Wow.
When something the size of a small car hits a big object, even though it's tiny compared to that object, at that velocity, it can do a lot of damage. And what NASA are trying to do over the next few weeks now, they're going to look at the path of this object, and they're going to see if it's been even remotely nudged. Now, in future missions, because this is obviously like the movie Armageddon with Bruce Willis, right, or Deep Impact, right? That they want to know if they can knock an asteroid off its course to protect Earth. And obviously, we're the first species that's ever had the ability to predict one of these things and actually try and then do something to avert it, right? So we get hit hundreds of times. Earth has been hit hundreds and hundreds of times. You'll know that there's been 6 mass extinction events on the Earth since life has been here.
Right. So yeah, I'll get further into that with you another time. But yeah, so that just confirms something that I've read. That's the information that you found too. 6 extinct. Say that again.
So there's been 6 extinction level events.
Extinction level events, yeah. And there's a lot of evidence to prove that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So one of the ways we know that these events cause extinction, and it's actually a fascinating. It's a story that probably lasts no more than 2 minutes, but I'll try and get through it quick. The last extinction event was 65 million years ago. Wiped out the dinosaurs, as we know. We know exactly when it happened, and when we drill down into the Earth, pretty much anywhere, you don't have to go far down. And in some countries, it's on the surface, and you can just go down a few inches or a foot, and there's about an inch or up to maybe 3 or 4 inches of iridium. Now, this metal is plentiful in space, but it's not plentiful on the Earth. So, but what would blanket the Earth in a sheet of iridium, right? That was because the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs was made from iridium, and it probably broke up or maybe destroyed itself a little bit when it hit the atmosphere. It's probably travelling at maybe 25 kilometres a second, probably the size of Mount Everest, something like this. It hit at a Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, but it there's so much iridium around the world that it wasn't just the impact that killed the dinosaurs. It wasn't just the tsunami events, and it wasn't just the volcanoes and the magma coming up to the surface. It was obviously what it was. It was all the dust and all the ash going into the atmosphere, the gases coming out from the Earth as well, and this poisoned whatever dinosaurs remained. But for months or years, we were in this planet was in darkness, so no plants could thrive. And when there's no sunlight, what else happens? We get cold, right? The Earth gets cold. By 5 in the morning every night, it's pretty cold. So imagine if it's been 6 months with no sun, the Earth is an icebox. So what species would become the dominant species on the planet when there's no light and it's extremely cold? What species does the fossil record show?
I'm going to say something nocturnal or small on the ground.
We've got a question? We've got a question over there from
We've got
you.
a question over here. So yeah, sure. Take the mic over here, and we'll go
Let's
ahead.
see if we can figure this out. Because it's in the fossil record. It's quite fascinating. It's not what you might think.
Right, so you've got a little grin in the crowd there.
Darkness and cold. What thrives?
Where it was. It was about what did you think? What species do you think survived something like that with the darkness?
Yeah, darkness and cold. What species loves darkness and cold? Doesn't need light. Fungus.
Fungus.
So, fungus. So, the fossil record shows.
Okay, so you give,
Sorry, say that again, did you?
Maybe a night getty.
A night. Look, it could have been, I wasn't around, it could have been anything back then, who knows? But it's a good answer though, man. But yeah, so it's fungus. So when they look at the iridium line, this is what's called the KT extension event, right? We look at the iridium line, and then just above it for decades is fossilized fungus. So we know how long the nuclear winter must have lasted for by the size of the fungus and how much it managed to grow.
right,
So yeah, in those conditions, fungus became the dominant species on the Earth for a few decades.
amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But there was other extinction events though that went on, and I just wonder if there was any signs of advancements from humanity that have been completely wiped out that we're not aware of, and we feel like we've sort of evolved along the way. Yet there's been a whole other generation of us that's been wiped away. We're not even aware.
So it's an interesting concept, and there are people who study this. Now, I'm not saying that there was a sophisticated civilizations like we have today, but there are reports in the archaeological record, in some of the religious texts and things like this, where God rained hellfire and brimstone from the heavens. That's how they interpret natural. That's how they interpret a meteor shower. They don't know what they're seeing, rocks coming from space. They say, look at that, fire from the heavens, and it wipes out cities. Now, around the Greek islands in the Mediterranean, there are literally dozens of towns that are underground or underwater, right, because of magma displacement. And so the tectonic plates move around, and so there's a lot of references to underwater cities like Atlantis. They weren't built underwater, obviously, but they sunk underwater. They're all through the archaeological record. There's drawings of these places, there's inscriptions on vases and stuff talking about Atlantis. No one knows where it is, but we know, even in Mexico, some of the volcanic activity, well, not so much volcanic earthquake activity there, we know that the land can sink down as much as 20, 50, 100 metres in the space of a year. And that's enough to easily, I mean, you only need to go down a few metres to bury someone underwater. So
I was wondering if that was maybe with the planet warming up, going through this cycle where the ice caps are melting a little bit more and it rises to the sea level. Yeah, but you're saying that it drifts down, drops down.
no, I'm saying that tectonic movement under the Earth causes some parts of the plates to move up. That's what causes mountains. At other times, some plates go down. So, and if you happen to have a village or a town from 5,000 years ago on one of those tectonic plates is going underneath, then there'll be probably no record that you existed. But we do know that when scuba divers, they do these missions and they go and look at, they find statues underwater in the Mediterranean. You can Google this stuff. There are towns, there's houses, there's all sorts of stuff. And we even know if these towns, we even know that they weren't wiped out from tsunamis. We know that some towns that remain on the side of hills where you find kind of the remnants of a town, we know that it was a tsunami because you can find fossilized shells and things halfway up a mountain or a steep hill, maybe 200-300 feet above sea level. So you say, well, if these people are living here, but there's all kind of shellfish and things you expect to find underwater buried in this dirt. There's other things you can do to see if there's been a kind of tsunami event, but these events happen all the time. When I say all the time, every 100 years, every 1,000 years, they happen all the time on this earth. It's only in the last 100 or 2 years we started recording them, but they've been going on for millennia.
Unbelievable. So how much action like this is happening out of space to without us even being aware? I want to get a little bit to the space side of things. I mean, I think you have some subjects, so I probably don't want to veer it off, but there was something interesting that happened this morning.
Yep.
Here in Perth, our time anyway. So once you
Yeah, sure. So, so that was the DART mission. So what they've done is they've shot a probe at an asteroid. Now, the asteroid had a moon orbiting it, and that was called Dimorphos, and the asteroid actually hit the moon. So now when I say moon, it's not a big moon like ours. I can't remember how big this asteroid was, but the probe was traveling at 6 kilometers per second, so it's pretty fast. It's by no means fast now when we compare it to other probes that NASA are flying around out there. I think there's one that's flying around the sun at the moment. It's called the Parker Space Probe. And that's doing about maybe 120 kilometers per second. So per second, not an hour. So this is super fast stuff.
Here's the Lancet.
Absolutely, every second. Yeah. Wow. So this is the velocities that we're doing it, and they do it with gravitational slingshots. So the Parker probe had to go around Venus or Mars or Mercury a few times. Every time we go past, the planets would sling it even quicker and quicker, and now it's got this incredible speed. So 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't think of doing this. We just did not have the technology, but it is exponential. And in science, and it started off in electronic engineering. There was a scientist called surname was Moore. I can't remember his first name. It's called Moore's Law. Every year, technology gets twice as powerful as it was the year before. And when you immerse into these fields like I am, you really see that. You see a gene sequencing machine coming out, and everyone's raving about how sophisticated it is. 12 months later, you can't sell it for one-tenth of what you pay for it, because the new ones that have come out dwarf it. So, we're looking at gene sequencing machines now that you can plug in the body of your iPhone, put a drop of blood, and the app will tell you everything you need to know about yourself. So, this is where we're going, yeah.
That's out at the moment, or that's not far?
It's not. It's by a company in England called Nano4. You probably Google it. I don't think it's out yet. Haven't seen any trials, but I know that's one of the things that they're trying to achieve.
What benefits can we get from having that sort of technology right now? At your phone, at your disposal, drop of blood, what happens? So I know now what can I do with it?
Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. So basically, it would tell you all about your DNA, if you're susceptible to certain health conditions, but it would also tell you, if you get it every month or two, it would tell you if the lifestyle changes that you're making are good. Because genes aren't just in your DNA, just sitting there idle. Genes have to be either switched on or switched off. And some genes can be oncogenes or cancer genes, and some genes are actually called tumor suppressor genes. The process of switching genes on and off is called DNA methylation, and I won't get into that because I really need to show you a picture of everything and how it works. But DNA methylation is something that you can control with a healthy lifestyle. And I use a supplement every single morning to control DNA methylation and certain parts of DNA methylation to make sure my cancer genes are turned off.
Okay, I mean, that's a pretty huge subject I think we should really dive into. Switching cancer genes off. Can you give us a lane of how this sort of works?
Sure. Absolutely. So when you've got, so a gene is just a sequence of amino acids, okay? And if I was to, and when I say a sequence of amino acids, for a gene you might have anywhere from 2,000 to 50,000 amino acids in that gene. That gene is copied inside the nucleus of the cell. It's then, and this is the fast version of it,
sure.
It's then converted into a protein. Okay, so there's a lot of steps in between that and having it converted into a protein. But that protein basically becomes a functional machine. That's what proteins are. That's why muscles are made of protein, because they're machines. But everything in your body is made of protein, which is made from amino acids. And there's three types of proteins: structural, things that hold things together, like collagen. Then you've got your machines, like muscles. And then you've also got your enzymes, which cause biochemical reactions. So with the cancer genes, we have genes inside our cells. Every cell of our body has a copy of our DNA, 3 billion base pairs of amino acids in every tiny little cell, so it's pretty complex. And but there's genes in there which tell the cells to divide uncontrollably. And when you're switched on, it's very hard to switch some of these off. And that's why cancer's such a bitch to cure or treat. Now upstream of cancer genes, we have what's called tumor suppressor genes. Nature, over billions of years of evolution, has put in what are called tumor suppressor genes. Those tumor suppressor genes remain in the on position, and that suppresses the next gene upstream, which is the oncogenes or the cancer genes. So that's DNA methylation. And the supplement I use every single morning is called curcumin, which is a derivative of a spice called turmeric. Now, don't get that confused with a spice called cumin. It's called curcumin. And to actually use it properly, you have to mix it with an oil because it's hydrophobic, right? Won't bore you with why that is, but So every morning before when I have my coffee, I put maybe a quarter of a teaspoon of curcumin in my cup. I put maybe a teaspoon of coconut oil, and there's a reason why exactly I won't get into it.
You can go into whatever you need to, man.
But,
It's a beautiful start,
it's just the best oil. It's a medium chain triglyceride, so it will liquefy the curcumin really quickly and the way you want it. And then I put my coffee in it. Not a big fan of the taste, to be honest with you. Prefer to have a cappuccino with cream and sugar, but health-wise, I know I'm doing something good for my body, and I don't let my taste buds dictate what I put in my body. I try and make sure that what I'm putting into my body is something that can weaponize me against disease.
Clearly, my taste buds are the king with me, and I need to adopt that train of thought, mate. Yeah. So I just want to quickly reset that we're doing the podcast here, episode 2 with scientist Raymond Palmer. We're just going into some science subjects. If you're listening on TikTok and you want the full experience, go over to YouTube or Twitch. And anyone listening on any other platforms, I'm not sure the sound's coming through okay. If it is, great. If it's not, try and catch one of the other platforms, including TikTok. You won't get the full screen. You just see me on TikTok. So back at it, mate. So the reason you're doing this is I'm going to throw it out there already, is that you study and you're really deeply into the subject of longevity of life. So this is one of the many things that you do for the process that you do to extend your life, anti-aging, age reversal. Do I be right in saying that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you give us some tips, pointers on how this all works and what studies have gone into it over these last several years? Because it's not that old. Maybe last 10 years it's been discovered. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I'll tell you something funny about the science that I do. I don't work at a local blood testing lab. I don't work at a gene testing lab. If I get in a taxi and the taxi driver says, "What do you do for a living?" and I say, "I work at a gene testing lab," he's like, "Oh, that's cool, whatever," right? But I work at a biotech company, and I developed technologies to reverse aging, not slow it down, not stop it, literally reprogram tissues through tissue engineering to make us young again. So next year, if the FDA approves it, we're going to do the first human clinical trial ever, and we're going to get maybe 50 subjects between the ages of maybe 75 to 85, preferably with health conditions: heart, lung, liver, kidney, neurological disease, muscle, bone, and skin. Because I'm claiming that we can rejuvenate and re-engineer these tissues. And now, why did I tell you that I didn't work as a geneticist or something before? People just say that's cool. Because when I get in a taxi and taxi says, "What do you do for a living?" and I say, "I try and reverse human aging," they just look at me with this blank stare. And when you work in a fringe science and you tackle these types of things, people they don't know how to take it. They're like, what making people young again? Are you crazy? They really think it's impossible. But I will argue till I'm blue in the face because I know the science, and I'm telling you, it's very possible. And if people are paying attention, you'll see that people like Jeff Bezos has just funded a company in San Diego, and I know the scientists working there personally. That's with Altos Labs. Because they want to reverse human aging. There's another company by Google called Calico. They put in, I don't know, billions as well to reverse human aging. Their slogan is solving death, right? This is coming, and it's going to come in a lifetime. So if you think you're going to have to grow old like your grandparents did, I'm telling you, in the next 10 to 15 years, we are going to reach something called biological escape velocity. Biological escape velocity is where you can repair the damage to tissues faster than aging can cause it. So aging causes damage to tissues because the biochemical reactions release free radicals. There's other reasons as well that we age. There's things like the shortening of telomeres, which we can talk about later, Joe, and also a thing called epigenetic rift. But we know how to lengthen telomeres. We know how to reverse epigenetic rift. Now it's just a matter of repairing the tissues faster than they're being damaged. So I'm currently spearheading a biotech company. And I've got the first patent being done in America at the moment. So, and believe me, it's not easy getting investors for these projects.
Sure.
It's hard because people are just, there's a bit of money. We're raising a lot of money, and but we know what we can do. And when we sit with investors, and investors see the science, and we show them, and before we show anyone, we make them sign contracts which are an inch thick. If they tell anyone what we're showing, they're going to lose everything they own. Even after they declare bankruptcy, we're going to still take stuff off them. Because if they want to invest, they obviously want to see the science. But I can guarantee you, before we've even finished showing them the animal trials and what we're doing, they're falling off their chair. They can't believe it. So get excited because we've got some stuff to show you in the next few years.
I am excited, mate. And we've touched on this subject at the beginning of the year, and I spoke to a couple of Americans in the medical industry over my podcast in the last 12 months or so. And I've said that I've spoken to you, and when I brought up this subject particularly, some of them, to my surprise, were like it was some old wives' tale bullshit, right? And I was like, have you seen the science behind it? Listen to the conversations that we've talked about. It's clearly had its experiments and results that have come through that prove that we're on this track. So next 10 to 15 years, when you say anti-aging, so people in their 75, 80 years old with the experiments that we're going to sort of do next year, you're saying that you can possibly bring them back to their 50s, things like that?
So yeah, so what we're doing is, so I'm not going to tell people that I'm going to reverse human aging. That's not how I word it. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to reverse the effects of human aging. That's what I'm doing. Because human aging is always going to be there. The free radicals and the damage caused by the biochemical processes is always going to be there. So rather than say I'm reversing human aging, I'm simply going to restore youthful function back into their tissues. And when we're talking tissues, we're talking all the main organs: brain, liver, heart, lung, kidney, skin, muscle, and bone. I wanted to point something out to you, John. What was it? I was going to mention something to you. Oh yeah, you were saying before that people think it's a science fiction, and people just kind of, their brains just go, oh yeah, whatever. Well, I'll tell you a story about two guys. I never met these guys, but if they knew me, they'd still be around. Arthur Wright and Wilbur Wright. Anyone know who they are? Yeah. Right. Exactly, yeah. So
that was there.
the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers.
Okay. Right.
So the Wright brothers invented the first flying machine. And I think it was in 1903 or 1904, around there. So now I know this story very, very well because guess what they were in? They were in a similar industry to me, and that industry was fringe science, right? So back in 1903, people were still getting around on horses and carts. That was probably one of the mode of transport, probably most of the type of transport that was still around. Only the wealthy could afford maybe cars and things like that, but everyone was still going around on horses and carts. And these guys wanted to build a flying machine. They just put a human in, would have an engine, and that human had a stick called a joystick, and he could fly anywhere. So when they went to see investors, they hit exactly the same brick walls that I hit. People just couldn't wrap their head around it. They said, what? You want to build a machine that's going to go in the air and a human's going to go in it? It's got an engine, and this thing on the back spins, it's got a propeller, it's going to propel this thing through. It makes you stupid. You're stupid. I'm living in that world right now, that reality, where I am screaming till I'm blue in the face to some investors. Right? This is the path I've chosen. And it's like people are plugged into the Matrix, and their brains can't wrap their head around a flying machine back in 1903, and people can't wrap their head around biological escape velocity in 2022, and just cracks us up. Because we know what we can do. And if you read the Wright brothers' story, when they talk to investors are doing what investors do. They're ringing up physicists at the local university or something and saying, look, these guys reckon they can do a flying machine. Is this possible? And of course, the physicists, it's never happened before. No one's ever done that and say, mate, don't put your money there. Those guys will never do it. But now we get on 747s and we take it for granted like it's nothing, right? So Moore's Law, which I mentioned before, just because what I'm talking about sounds impossible, just like the Wright brothers project sounded impossible back in 1903, know this. Learn from their mistakes. Learn from the investors that missed out. And I'm not trying to offer you an investment, but I'm just saying, but if you've got some money, I'm happy to talk later. So learn from their mistakes. Because people back then that didn't believe that these guys could do it, they missed out on an opportunity. And I know that sounds like I'm trying to get people in, I'm not, but what I'm saying is...
No, mate, I want to cut in there, sorry, and back it up. I think any massive changes that are happening scientifically or anything like that in the world, or any change of history where they've discovered something new, it's always shut down. It's always shut down. People don't want to look wrong. They want to feel stupid. It's something they haven't thought of it or thought through or tried to experiment with themselves like you have, right, with this particular situation. So I totally agree that you've got to go through those walls. And the way I like to put it is dropping a microwave in the dark ages, and if they have power plug it in, they just blow their fucking mind because it's like how we just
Absolutely. So until I mean, especially in the dark ages, I mean, any kind of technology we have today would look like magic to people from 200 years ago. A mobile phone, a microwave oven, everything. But we take it for granted like it's nothing. So don't think that human aging is just something far off in the future. In fact, I've been making fun of Hollywood for a long time. I love the directors there. I love the movies that they churn out, especially the science fiction movies. But they make the most massive mistake ever in all their science fiction movies, right? And that is that people in those movies get old. And these movies are set 100 years in the future, like the new Star Trek franchise and all that sort of stuff. Mate, people aren't getting old 100 years in the future. People aren't getting old 50 years in the future. There's things like Elon Musk, he's developing Neuralink. There's a guy in Perth who's developing projects as well, which is similar. I won't go into that, but the human body is obviously a biological machine. The best way, I guess the most resilient way to exist with sentience, self-awareness, is as a synthetic organism. So instead of having an arm which is made from proteins, which it has to be at a certain atmospheric pressure, it has to be at a certain temperature to exist. It can't go near a certain temperature. So this is very fragile. But if you had something made of carbon fibre with 10,000 sensors in it, so you still feel untouched, you can take that anywhere. You can take it into space. You can touch something which is red hot. So synthetic organisms, believe it or not, that's coming as well. And in fact, Elon Musk says that's the biggest threat to humanity. AI.
Yeah, I have seen it. He's talking about in podcasts. He talks on other podcasts about it too. Really, is a bigger threat than nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Ray, we have a message from the King over in the US. He's listening. We're live, so welcome, King. We're going to play this message. Excuse if it doesn't come through clear. We'll give it a go.
Hey, good morning, Ryan. Good morning, Raymond. This is the King from the US. Enjoying the show so far. I had a quick question about that. What are the limits on that reversing of aging? You say reverse aging. You're not going to go back and turn into a baby, right? I mean, that'd be silly. I'm just talking about that. Like, the idea is to prolong someone's life, right? Like, how many more years do you think it's going to tack on? Because I know somebody that died in 1977 might need some help. Just saying.
That is the King.
That's a great question, man. And appreciate how you going over there. That's good to hear your voice. So a couple of things about this. No, it won't. It will not rewind time in a sense that it can make you smaller or younger. But what it can do is rejuvenate tissues as an adult. So it can give you full useful function back into tissues which may be functioning at the age you might be. So one of the reasons this has to be done is because there are now more people on the planet over the age of 65 under the age of 5. That's the first time in human history that there's been more older people on the planet than younger people. And that might sound nice, it might not, but that is very, very scary because in 20 years' time, all these 5-year-olds are going to be 25, and we're going to have another billion or two people over the age of 65. And the younger generation somehow has to wear the burden, the financial system, the healthcare system, the family unit trying to look after all these old people. And at the moment, what we're doing, what medical science is doing, is extending people's lives, but it's not giving them a quality of life where they can still contribute, they can function, they can be fit and healthy. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to make sure these people are not a burden on the young people. We're going to keep them fit and healthy and vibrant so they don't have disease. See, at the moment, governments all over the world, they approach this problem from I would say back to front, doing everything the wrong way around. What they do is at the moment they wait for you to get old. They wait for you to get disease from old age. And bear in mind that aging is the #1 cause of disease. Okay? So in my book, I'd be attacking aging, right? Because that's the #1 cause of disease. But governments around the world spend less than 1% of health fund research on aging. The rest of the 99% is spent on trying to reverse engineer the diseases of aging. Alzheimer's, dementia, liver disorders, heart disorders, all these types of things. It's back to front. The simple panacea for this is to keep the tissues young in the first place, keep them youthful in the first place. People will not get those diseases. And so at the moment, 99% of all the funding for disease goes into reverse engineering. And I can tell you this, you'll never ever cure a lot of these diseases like Alzheimer's. You'll never cure them. You can spend $100 billion trying to cure this disease. You will not cure it unless you rejuvenate the tissues first. It's like trying to fix a car and drive it down the street, but it's so rusty, the frame is falling off. Mate, that engine might run, but that car's falling apart no matter what. You need to build the frame back. And that's what we do with tissue engineering. We put it all back together. So, yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions, and that might lead towards the Alzheimer's thing, but what causes aging? What is the process that you haven't been able to figure out for all this time?
So there's a lot of drivers to the aging process, right? So I guess the most simplest ones would be free radicals and free radicals from biochemical reactions. Also environmental insults. Over the years, UV light, you've ingested toxins, poisons, heavy metals. The body can't clear them, so they sit in the tissues, maybe causing all sorts of problems. Also, every time the cells divide, the tips of your chromosomes, which are called telomeres, they get shorter and shorter until they get so short that the cells can no longer divide. So when the cells can't divide and you start running out of skin cells or any type of cell, what happens is the cells are usually the factories that make the proteins that go into your body to do all the functions. So when the cells can't produce those proteins anymore because you're losing them, you start to become skinny and frail. And it's one of the reasons you see an 80-year-old or a 90-year-old, they sit very, very skinny. They've got very, very brittle skinny bones, skinny muscles. This is because we're running out of cells. So that's another driver to the aging process. So I could rattle off another 4 or 5.
I'm curious to go down that track.
Yeah, sure. So another one is called Epigenetic Rift. So the human genome has about 3 billion base pairs, and a base pair is basically just 2 amino acids that kind of sit opposite each other like this on the double helix. So 3 billion of those in every single cell. It's fantastically complex, and it's a miracle we even know this stuff. We've got equipment that can actually analyze it. So when you're young, certain genes are turned on, useful genes. And as we age, some genes that can be used will get turned off, and some genes that cause you to grow old or have the symptoms of old age, they get turned on. That's called epigenetic drift. So, for example, a 20-year-old man has a lot of testosterone. By the time he's 50, his testosterone dropped off maybe by 70%. So that's epigenetic drift. Now, we know how to turn these things back up. You could, supplement with testosterone. So you can do all these things to bring up these youthful levels of stuff that you used to have that kept you useful. And a lot of people do. They supplement with
TRT,
testosterone and a bunch of other
That's
stuff.
all synthetic though, or is that a natural process to do that?
Synthetic, people ask me this a lot, right? When it comes to the word synthetic or natural, and they say, what's better? And there is an undercurrent out there, of course, and it's not even an undercurrent. If anything, it's an overcurrent. We all love the natural world. There's no one's going to sit here and tell you the natural world should play, be put in second place. But when it comes to biotech and the type of technologies we work with, it'd be great if it was natural. Unfortunately, the natural world hasn't provided us the tools to reverse the effects of aging. So
Clearly, your body doesn't know the difference though.
Body doesn't know the difference. So a molecule is a molecule, and it doesn't matter if it's found in nature. If it's made in the lab, for me, because I trust the processes in the lab, it doesn't make any difference. If I'm going to ingest a molecule, I don't care if it's from a lab or from a tree.
Right, it's interesting. So, we do have a question. So, you put that to the audience. That's two of the processes. The epigenetic drift.
Yep.
And the elongation of the chromosomes. What else is there?
Okay, so environmental insults.
Right.
So toxicology, so environmental insults. So what I mentioned before, things like heavy metals, the ingestion of certain toxins, UV light, damaging tissues. It all goes, believe it or not, it all comes back to roost. So if you are a 10-year-old kid and you get sunburned, and then that sunburn heals itself in a matter of a few days, everyone's clapping and oh, that's fine, look, the skin's beautiful, there's no problem. But that UV light damaged some of that DNA, and that damaged DNA sitting in the cell. That cell's going to divide, and it's going to copy its DNA, and that's damaged DNA it's copying, and it divides. And
that's what cancer is.
This is what it's what cancer is. Yeah. Now it may not manifest as cancer; it just may be black blemishes on people's skin. You see this in people's faces. There's a person in my family who's 84. He's got a lot of black spots around his face and on his right arm, because he used to be a taxi driver, so his arm was on the window. Yeah. But you can see this. Now, when he was a taxi driver, he was young and vibrant. He never dreamed in a million years that 30 or 40 years later, his arm would be looking like that compared to this one. But it shows you that, this damage, tissue damage happens, but you don't know about it another 2 or 3 decades.
Sure. So I heard something about if you get, especially here in Australia, because of the whole ozone layer, if you get that really badly twice in your life, you have a high chance of getting cancer, right? I remember my mum and dad, which in the audience, trying to okay, get us to put sun cream on and stuff, and I didn't like it, so I didn't do it. And I used to get burnt over and over. I couldn't lie on my back at night, things like that. I mean, a lot more than twice. So now that I'm older, I'm more aware of how dangerous they can be, and I am very cautious. But as a kid, without that logic or understanding, give a shit.
Yeah.
But we've got to really force that upon our children. We have a message from the audience. Okay, yes, sir.
G'day, Raymond. Terrific talk, mate. Absolutely fantastic. In regards to aging, what happens with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and those sort of diseases which are really bad? That reverse, can you reverse those particular diseases? Or you're not quite there yet?
So it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that question. I'll never tell you that I can cure any disease ever, not until we've done it, and we've done a clinical trial to do it. So what we do know is diseases like the ones you just mentioned, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, these types of diseases, especially in Parkinson's, the myelin sheath. You know what a wire looks like a wire like this, and has a bit of rubber over it, and that protects the metal from touching another wire and shorting out. That's the basics of why they have an insulator. All the nerves that go through your body have what's called a myelin sheath, which is like the insulator on a wire. In Parkinson's, the myelin sheath starts to deteriorate, and the wires are touching. It's like this, and the electrical signals are causing you to shake like this. This is all Parkinson's is. There's different manifestations of it, and there's different reasons for it. But what we know in animals is that the therapy that we're going to do a human trial with next year can reverse those symptoms in animals. So,
reverse the symptoms if they're damaged, or like I thought there's not really much to do with to reverse it. But
so what I'm saying is when we put tissue or can restore tissue function into old animals start to show less symptoms of this condition. Is it temporary? How long does it last for? I don't know what the effects are yet. It's too early to tell. Will it work in humans? I couldn't tell you. What I can tell you is that we're good at what we do, and we're looking at this very closely. And when I say we've got some great universities and some great minds working on this. We're excited. We think we're going to do a lot of great stuff. That patent, the first one of many that we're lodging at the moment in America, that patent, the first one that we're lodging, and hopefully we'll have it at the end of this week. We just can't wait to get it, because once we've got it, we can start.
I could see that you're limited in what you could say.
Yeah, I'm very limited in what I can
know
say.
you want to burst at the seams, but can't talk about it, so I can't wait to maybe talk about that again in the future. Ray, there was an experiment that was done, and maybe it was you that told me this actually, about an old mouse and a young mouse and exchanging blood. Can you give, I'll destroy it if I try.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's very relevant for this conversation, and it's relevant for your question that you asked. When we get animals, pretty much any species of animals that's been tested on, you can get two animals. One can be really old, have liver dysfunction, neurological dysfunction, sarcopenia, which is loss of muscle, osteopenia, where it's loss of bone, and you get a young animal, and you infuse the young blood of the young animal into the old organism, which is close to death. Something magical happens. The old organism becomes young again, very, very rapidly too. Not over a year, not over 6 months, within days. Fur grows back where it's starting to lose hair. Muscle, energy, cognition, memory, it all bounces back. Now, there's over 100,000 components in human blood. It's very, very complex. So what is in human blood that can do this in humans? And I'm going to tell you, that's what we're using. We know what it is, and that's what we've just patented. So it's really exciting for us. So that's why we just can't wait to do it. We've got a clinical trial partner in America that we're working with, and they handle the FDA for us. So we don't think we're going to have to do more animal trials. We think we're just going to go straight to human trials.
And why aren't people? This is a particular discovery that you've made, that you're talking about, not just exchanging blood. People exchange blood with younger people over a process of they've been aging.
There's a company in Silicon Valley called Ambrosia, and they do it. You can go there, pay $8,000, and they will give you young blood plasma and infuse you with like 2 liters of young blood. Right, so that's in Silicon Valley. That sounds like Frankenstein stuff. We're gonna do it a little bit more
Scientific.
Yeah, scientifically than that. And but there's a lot of components in young blood that can rejuvenate old people, as far as we're concerned. And the way we want to be able to do it is that it's got to be cheap, because everyone's got to be able to afford it, right? So, and this is where the magic happens, because we can do it, and we can do it. We've got to go to a clinic and get an IV, and it's going to cost $8,000.
Like a collagen thing you're saying one day, we can go down to the clinic and people get collagen in their lips. We'll be able to do something with the person.
That's exactly right, exactly right. So I have developed a device, right? This is another patent that we've got coming up. I've developed a device, which is a handheld device that you can have at home. You don't need a doctor. And you might have a weekly dose of it. And it's a handheld device. It's not invasive. It's easy to use. And there's a few other. There's a few things in the magic potion. And this is what the human clinical trial is going to be testing next year.
So just for the record, ladies and gentlemen, Ray's 157 years old. So just look at him as well. We have a question from an audience member, and then we've got a question online too. So what was that, Penny? Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. It sounds like you guys think you're pretty much in advance of all these clinics and all these testing that you guys are doing at the moment. And you seem to have the technology here in Australia, the scientists here in Australia. Why are you going to America to do the patent and let them into the game? I can't work that out. Why don't you do it here in Australia and hold it here in Australia instead of you going to America?
It's a great Americans on one, by the way, and I see Graham sees in the crowd too.
That's a great question. It's a great question. I'm a patriotic Australian, and I absolutely understand why you're asking that. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I've been dealing with the TGA, Therapeutics Goods Administration, here in Australia. Had a lot of conversations with it, and the TGA are like the FDA in America. The TGA have told me that aging is natural and shouldn't be interfered with. And they have also told me that you can't give drugs to otherwise healthy people. They won't tolerate it. And in a nutshell, I'm not saying it's when it comes between Australia and America. I treat aging as a treatable disease. And it is the number one cause of disease, aging is. So what I'm going to say is, when it comes to biotech regulations, unfortunately, the American landscape is much more friendlier to startups and entrepreneurs. You can get things done much faster, and there's still a lot of checks and balances that the FDA will make you do, but the amount of fees here at the TGA to get things done are astronomical compared to America. So America, and this is why they've got Silicon Valley, America is very, very clever, not just in creating industries, but attracting foreigners. They're very clever. Dubai's doing the same thing. 85% of people that live in Dubai are foreigners, because the corporate code and the taxes, the way you can set up companies, the flexibility.
They're very, very welcoming, and they'll bring a lot of people from a diverse range of people that can work together and do things. I also say in comparison to Thailand, where I used to live before, it's a mission, and you can look at the place. So yeah, then compare it to Dubai.
So yeah, on that note, if I wanted to do this in Australia, I'd probably go twice the amount of money, and I'd have to just have twice as many meetings with God knows how many ministers trying to get it through, and it would probably take twice as long, even 10 times as long, I'd hate to think. And I hate to say that about Australia, but the regulation here when it comes to biotech is so far behind. I know we're in Australia now, and this might not be relevant for my American friends and other people listening, but when you walk into a pharmacy here in Australia and you see all these vitamins and health things on the wall, and you say, oh, look at this, we've got everything, there's hundreds of different brands here. I can tell you, as somebody that is immersed in this industry and designs supplements and all this sort of stuff, compared to America, there are so many products we're not getting in our pharmacies here, and most Australians have never even heard of them. And there's people that have read my book would probably read. I've written a book called the Anti-Aging Toolkit. Shameless So yeah, in my book, the Anti-Aging Toolkit, I talk about certain supplements that people should take in order to ward off the aging process and what they can do. None of them are sold in Australia, and there's probably 20 of them, right? So just give you an idea of how far we are. All the ones I'm taking every day and not sold here, I can buy them on Amazon.
Right.
So,
And just saying, it sounds like there's a lot of different things over there as well that we're not aware of. Could be why maybe they're a little bit more skeptical too, because there's probably a lot of toys that tell them, of course, as well, they're fake, and then they've got the real ones as well. Whereas here, I think we're a little bit more trusting when something comes out on the market, I think, than the US. Now, we have a question from Chuck from the US. Here we go.
Morning, Rob. Morning, Ray.
hey,
Ray, tell me you got your telescope some good footage of smashing into that asteroid. I really want to know that you were able to capture that. Please tell me you got that.
So Chuck, just touch late. We started at the beginning, but we didn't go into it too much. And let's put a pin in the longevity and go into that question.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Chuck, thanks for your question, man. Can you share screen and can you bring up my observatory? Because I'm not sure if people listening know. So yes, I'm a scientist. I work in aging, but I've also got a degree in astronomy, and I've got an observatory in my back garden because I'm a mad scientist. So Joe's just going to share that too. And click the observatory link when you go there, Joe.
Observatory link.
Chuck, in answer to your question, I was actually going to, yes, second on the left. Oh, you got it there. Yes, this is my observatory. And yes, in my backyard. Yeah.
I've been in there, ladies and gentlemen, and it's just
What your neighbours say.
absolutely awesome.
Oh, they love it.
It's like a few dice we need to.
And Chuck, in answer to your question, I was going to get my scope and point it at that piece of sky where the asteroid was, just to see if there was a flash or something. But I think it was hitting around 5:15, 5:20 West Australian time. We had too much daylight, so I didn't even bother getting out of bed or trying, because I just, if there's daylight, I'm not going to see anything. But I will tell you, I am going to be there tonight because Jupiter is really, really close at the moment. So
I'm going after this podcast.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to try and check Jupiter out tonight because it's really close. It'll be close for the next couple of weeks. But it's, and I, to be honest, I haven't been in the observatory for a while, so I need my fix.
Off that telescope, mate. Yeah. Something else really, really interesting happened to you, which is on your website too. Let's bring this up here. I'm gonna pull this screen. This picture, mate. I'm gonna go back to here, and I think it's this one. Let's go into that. I want people to know the story, mate. It's still fascinating.
So what we're looking at there is a Southern Cross, and so I'm not sure if you see the Southern Cross in the centre of the photo, the kind of the 5 stars, and then above it to the left, you can see something which looks like a fast-moving meteor, which is kind of pointing at the Southern Cross. Well, that fast-moving meteor is not a meteor, and it's not fast-moving. In fact, it's not even moving from left to right. It's moving from right to left. Now, what could that be? How could something look like that? Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I was taking a photo of the Southern Cross one night, and it's a 30-minute exposure. When you do astrophotography and you photograph deep space, you're in total darkness. So the shutter on the camera has to remain open for an extended amount of time. This was a 30-minute exposure. So the shutter in the camera opens up and it stays open for 30 minutes. And then the faint light from space can trickle in onto the film, because I was using film for this photo. I've got the negative if you want to buy it. It's for sale.
How much is that?
Make me
$1 million.
$1 million. So anyway,
just for those on TikTok or anywhere else, if you want to go over to YouTube channel, Rocstedi Podcast, you'll be able to see the images that are on the screen at the moment, or you can leave a message on _Rocstedi on Instagram. Mate, so back to you.
Yeah, no worries. So basically, you've got the shutter open on the camera. The faint light from deep space is trickling in onto the film. When you're doing that type of photography, the Earth is obviously turning all the time. It doesn't stop spinning for me. So I'm trying to invent something for that, but I'm busy at the moment. Yeah. But anyway, so because the Earth is always turning, the telescope has to track against the Earth's rotation to keep the stars as pinpoints on the film. And it takes a lot of practice and a lot of mucking around to get it working properly. But anyway, so I'm taking this photo of the Southern Cross, a 30-minute exposure. I'm about 20 minutes into it, and I look up at the sky and I see this round object. To the naked eye, it was round, and it started off as a kind of a really, really bright star. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger until it was the size of a full moon. And I had no idea what this was. Now, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I was actually up I set up in the bush out past Bullswood, a place called Golden Grove, or Chittering it was. And so it was a Monday night. It's about 2 in the morning. I'm sitting in the bush, total darkness, and this thing's appearing in the sky. And I know that there's no comets or meteors that are scheduled to be flying past, so I kind of know that whatever I'm seeing is rare and it's probably unexpected, and that's a pretty cool thing to catch something like that. And also know on a Monday night at 2 a.m. there's not many people outside shivering in the cold, staring at the sky. Crazy scientists like me are, right, for some reason. So, but anyway, what I did is after the 30 minutes, I closed the shutter on the camera, I stuck an eyepiece in the telescope, and I had a look at this thing. By this stage, it was the size of the full moon, and I looked at this thing through the eyepiece of the telescope. And when I looked at it, what I saw was a round patch of mist, and you could see through the mist, and you could see some of the background stars, which are just fixed. They're not moving. But this round patch of mist is slowly moving like this, and inside the mist is the most craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm the only human being to have ever seen this, so I feel very, very lucky that I was blessed this night to see what I'm about to tell you. Inside the mist were these flashing lights. Now, some lights were flashing really slowly, like on, off, on, off. Some lights were flashing really quickly, like this. And there was probably two or three dozen in an area of the sky the size of a full moon, right? And I could see the background stars through the mist as this, so there were all these flashing objects in this mist are moving across the background stars. I had no idea what I was looking at, no idea at all. So I packed everything in my car, raced home, locked the brakes up in my driveway, and I'm on my computer. I'm ringing the observatories in South Africa because they're next in night for night time. The observatory in Perth here wasn't working Monday night, so the only guy that's seen it. And so basically, this object's in a constellation called Centaurus. I'm telling the South African observatories. I email a few other colleagues around the world. Mate, you've got to get, there's something up there. And then by 6 a.m. I went to bed, and I wake up about 11 a.m. and I've got like 100 missed calls on my phone, and then I'm making my coffee. I'm still waking up, and now the night before I'm kind of not even thinking about it. And then my computer, I've got like 200 emails from the media, and there's all people that work night shift that all saw something in the sky. No one knew what it was. And I'm the only guy that maybe in this world of science that saw it, but also photographed it. So everybody, the entire world. I've got satellite tracking stations in Canada contacting me. I've got all sorts of cool people contacting me to find out what this thing was. Well, and debate raged. I still didn't know what it was. For a couple of days, debate raged. And then NASA did a press release. And they said, we know what Mr. Palmer photographed. And they said it was a malfunctioning Russian rocket called a Brizan, which had $200 million Arabian satellite as a payload that failed to launch the satellite. And this rocket, the size of a small building, I mean, it's like a skyscraper when you see it, it's huge, was tumbling around Earth in kind of like a weird elliptical orbit, and it was still full of rocket fuel. And it got hit by a meteor, and it exploded. So when I first heard that explanation, I said, no, that's bullshit. There's no way that's what happened. But then I sat back and I thought about it, and I thought about all those flashing lights. And do you know what they are? This outside of this rocket is shiny chrome. It's very reflective. The inside is all opaque where the fuel goes. So as these pieces of debris are spinning in space like this, right? They're pieces of debris the size of your car, the size of your fridge, right? They're spinning in space like this. Some are spinning really quickly. They'll flash quickly, and the other ones are spinning really slowly like this. So it's flash on, flash off, flash on. I saw the debris field of an exploding rocket, and no one's ever seen it before, through the icons of the telescope. And I've got to tell you, made the hairs in the back of my neck stand up, and it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And you've got to see it.
It wouldn't be the hairs on his head, first of all. It wasn't the back of his head, back of his neck. But mate, the chances of you looking at that patch of sky at that time of night and filming it are just
billions.
1 in 7 billion.
Well, it's got to be. It's got to be, man. I mean, how often does that happen? How often does a rocket explode over the Earth? Never, right?
Wow.
I mean, they explode on takeoff or re-entry. But just floating around in space, they never blow up. So it actually captured that on film. And
So that tail that's coming out is where the rocket was. The meteors hit the rocket, and that's the spray of fuel.
yes, that's actually the round patch of mist that's trailed across my photo, and it's moved from the right, and it's moved to the left. So it's gotten bigger. So it's where it's a pinpoint. That's the point of explosion. And then it's slightly moved, and then I've cut the photo off after maybe 10 minutes, and had a look through the telescope.
Had that kept going, that tail would have elongated.
It would have kept going, yeah.
And so did you get good? I mean, you're obviously in the paper stuff.
Well, it was. So it was on the news. It was in the papers, scientific magazines all over the world. And but I got a lot of people reached out to me from Europe, and especially Russia. And there's a lot of science magazines in Russia, and so they were asking for permission to run the photo in their magazine and get the story. And I said, yeah, of course, it's good publicity. And I said, but just give me 2 favors. Mention my name, and I said, send me a copy of the magazine. I'd love to read it. Right? So they said, yeah, sure, duh. Anyway, they sent me these Russian magazines about 3 months later It's all in Russian, I can't read a thing. But so I clicked through just at the page where I see my photo, and I figured that must be the story, right? And then I'm looking at all this Russian text, but in the text, maybe every fourth or fifth paragraph, you see the words Mr. Palmer, Raymond Palmer. And that's the only Russian
I would have also asked for Vladimir Putin to sign it as well. I would have
yeah,
signed that bit of paper.
yeah, I've kept all the magazines, man, for posterity.
Nice. I mean, that's a pretty wild story. Now, we have a message from one of the listeners in the audience.
Yes, that's
Yes, go ahead, no problem. Thanks for joining in. Appreciate it.
Considering you look through the telescope and you're looking at the universe and things like that, and you're discovering a lot of that information, what's your thought on UFOs?
Well, just before we go to the UFO track, right? I want to go back to, there's a question that's coming, I should have taken it first, sorry, and then we'll go back to the UFO thing. But one of the questions was, how did it explode with flames if space is a vacuum with no oxygen or fuel to explode?
Yes, that's a great question. So because the rocket fuel is in a confined space in a fuel tank, if you hit it and you can ignite it, but the second it enters the vacuum of space, it will go out. But it's enough of an explosion to blow the rocket up.
Right, okay. So that answers that question. And now back to the UFO thing. So that's probably something to unpack a little bit here. There's a lot of things over time, especially since Roswell and World War II, that of sightings and bits and pieces. And I have my own thoughts and beliefs in extraterrestrials or not. But there's a lot of things that have been coming out the last couple of years, like officially from was the White House? No.
Yeah, Pentagon.
Pentagon, from the Pentagon, correct. Yeah, saying or actually admitting and acknowledging UAPs, unidentified flying
Aerial phenomena.
Yeah, correct. So, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
So, if you believe the Pentagon, and if you believe the pilots, and if you believe the very, very professional military personnel that are all lending, to these stories and corroborating them, that there is something in American airspace that they cannot identify, they cannot figure it out, and the Pentagon has released this. I would struggle to say that there's an advantage for the Pentagon to release that and lie about it. So, is it alien? Is it alien? I don't know that, but is there something breaching the airspace of Earth and that we can't explain? The evidence suggests there is. So, and if this is a rabbit hole, because if there is if there's something here that we can't explain, but we're capturing it on thermal, we're capturing it. I mean, we've had eyewitness accounts of people seeing UFOs for decades. For decades, they've been happening. Now, a lot of them get laughed at. A lot of them get treated as crackpots, and the media might be tipped by government to make them look like crackpots, and so that we always regard UFOs as silly because they don't want us to know. Maybe who knows? And as I say, it's a rabbit hole because there's so many angles to this conversation. But then what gets me on this subject is that the witnesses are fantastically credible. I mean, if you want to be a United States Air Force pilot and you want to fly those jets worth $50 or $100 million, they pick the best of the best, highly intellectual people. And these are the people that are giving evidence saying that they follow these things and they track them. And there's a lot of these, even naval officers on ships are doing the same as well. So personally, I haven't seen one. I did think I had seen something when I saw that rocket explode, but that's as close as I've come. But the evidence suggests that there's something we can't explain, and it's coming from great minds and very sophisticated equipment.
Maybe there's something that was released. I'm not sure how true this is. I saw it the other day from Jeremy Corbell's. My friend Morgan really loves this stuff, and he's right into that sort of extraterrestrial UAP scene. And the Nim Aviation has just released or updated the logo. I've just put it on the screen on the screen share here. With this, and I'm not sure if they're really acknowledging UFOs. Check that out. Is this true? Can anyone confirm that's listening? Can you see that? So that was their logo. They've always had, or they've just added this in there.
Oh, right, okay.
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't want to be hoaxing anyone here. What about logo for the national? Yeah,
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know if it's a hoax or not, but I just wanted to bring that up because if that's, he's one that's pushing for this, and he's one that spoke to David. He was a pilot in the Air Force, and he actually like chased the UFO. And the stories on Joe Rogan podcast, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, right.
Over and over
Yeah.
and over. Just this guy is so credible. He's got nothing to gain and everything to lose, and he wasn't getting anything out of it. He said he wasn't chased by guys in like suits to shut up or anything like that. He explained it, and it's just, it's truly out of this world. His belief is that there are, unless there's a country we don't know about that's created these things, there's extra, phenomenal intelligence out there.
Yeah.
System. So I'm a strong believer of it, and I guess that maybe answers the question that you asked the audience there.
So do I believe in it? As in, because I'm an astronomer as well, the universe is so big, it's so vast. I mean, for every star you see in the night sky, there's 100 worlds that orbit our star. You think there's 8 planets or 9 planets. There's over 100 worlds because we have so many moons orbiting this star as well. That's 100 locations where life can be just around this one star. There's 400 billion stars in the Milky Way, and we know there's already about 2 trillion galaxies. So, for me to think that we're just here by ourselves, it's just, I think that's really ignorant. And, I think space is teeming with life. Maybe just not locally, but I think it's on out there.
Earth is full of aliens, right? All the animals, including ourselves, are all extraterrestrial to any other world. I mean, look how much life's on Earth.
Yeah.
There's replication of those conditions anywhere else.
Yeah.
Or it's not even what we need or they need in other planets from what Earth has. I mean, it's just, I think it's a no-brainer, but who knows? I'm just a podcast.
What's interesting about the evolution of life on this Earth here, life was here for hundreds of millions of years before it developed intelligence. Okay, what that might indicate, because we've had 6 extinction level events here, is that life is ubiquitous. It is all through the universe, but it's just not intelligent enough to maybe manufacture a technology that can, communicate or travel through space. So maybe that's a rarity for life. Maybe there is life everywhere, but it's just simple forms of life, animalistic or something like that. So that's I've read a paper about that as well. So.
A couple of questions, or just comments from the listeners already out here. We've got Ryan Wilson says, can you test it on me? And I think he was talking about that when you're going to get some subject to test next year. But Shotgun King, he says these pictures are out as well. That's
Cool, man.
He's always out. It's a joke stuff. Thanks. So let's go back and revisit again the longevity. I want to sort of pick it up from there again. What sort of things are you taking or doing to suppress the aging process? How successful, how quickly are you seeing the results from them? And what's your opinion of what's to come from continual use of that, and if there's any additional things to add to the mix?
Yeah, so I mean, my regime on a good day could be anywhere from 15 to 20 supplements or pills. Some are pharmaceutical. So the pharmaceutical one I take is a diabetic drug. It's called metformin. So I'm far from being diabetic. I'm probably on the other end of the scale from being diabetic. The reason I take metformin is metformin slows down the release of sugar from the liver. It also slows down the absorption of sugar through the cell wall into the cell. What that means is it means your cells are always starving, which means your cells are tricked into thinking that you're fasting and you're not eating. Right now I fast as well, so I don't eat until lunchtime, and I don't eat after 6 p.m. So I fast for 18 hours a day. At first, if you ever decide to try it, you don't have to do 18 hours. You could do 15 hours, but after a while, it just becomes natural. After a while, you don't even think about food. But what the metformin does for me is, because my cells think I'm experiencing time of famine, my cells have to go into survival mode. And it means they stop dividing, because you remember your cells can only divide a certain amount of times before you run into your divisional limits. And that's when you stop producing proteins, and you start to become skinny and frail. So to slow down the onset of frailty, you want to slow down cell division, right? So that's one of the reasons. And also, so I take metformin and I fast to do that. So my cells are dividing much slower than, say, my next door neighbours. He's probably aging twice as fast as I am, right? And we're both the same age, 78, which is interesting.
Do you mind sharing your age, mate?
Yeah, I'm 49.
49.
So
Okay.
49.
You do look fantastic.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and your wife too. Next pair of you, you're both like super young and
Which one?
wife number 3 and 4. So look, that's good. So you take the metformin. Now you're saying it slows down the sugar intake through the walls. So what if you literally ate a spoon of sugar? What would happen?
So if you took a spoonful of sugar while you're on metformin, it's not going to do anything. But that
No, I
spoonful,
mean, like, it will slow down the process of it being absorbed until your body will get rid of the rest over a certain period of
but it
time.
will still spike your insulin levels.
Right.
It will still spike your insulin levels. we know that high sugar spikes increase epigenetic rift, and that is the way that your genes change through our age.
Our diets are full of sugar.
Our diets are full of sugar, right? So yeah, 100 years ago, sugar was hardly anywhere, and now we have just food companies got it everywhere. So yeah, it's terrible.
It's
So,
sickening. Yeah, yeah.
in fact, I've got a video on YouTube, and it's about sugar, and the words on the thumbnail image of that video is toxic, poison, danger, warning, or something like that, because I consider sugar a poison. There's 3 things in my house you won't find, and that's sugar, ashtrays, and salt. They are gone, and that is, and I can guarantee you, another few decades, no one will have those in there, and the science on those things will be so profound. It's already profound on cigarettes, so no one has ashtrays. Most people don't have ashtrays these days, but sugar and salt's still in there. But you've got these poisons in your kitchen, and most people don't even know it. You know, the salt speeding up the alkalinity and the thickening and stiffening of arteries and skin and all this sort of stuff. So is the sugar. You know, if you knew the science on it, it's mind-blowing. But there's a lot of blowback because there's billion-dollar companies that are making a ton of money from it.
What's your opinion on the alkalinity of water? So just to give you an idea, like I drink tap water any time. You always have to drink bottled water. Come back to Australia to drink tap water. I don't like it. It does taste. It tastes almost acidic a little bit, and I really could gauge that when I got some water from the store that was high in alkaline. It was like 9+ on the alkaline, and it's just like drinking God's nectar. It's so amazing that I said to my wife, just get that water only, and that's all. I'm drinking that only. You know, it's fantastic. I feel better. It quenches my thirst. I want to drink water. When that runs out, I don't feel like drinking the other water. So does it have any benefits to your body? Does it matter?
So it depends what age you are. Depends on how alkaline your body should be and what acid you should have. Once you start hitting the age of 50, your body will start to become more alkaline. Okay, and this is called. There's a name for this because it causes so many problems. It causes cataracts. Alkaline causes cataracts. It causes stiffening of the arteries. It causes wrinkles. It causes anything. Think of anything that becomes stiff and hard.
It's like a calcium.
Acts like a calcium. That's a good way of saying it, right? And this condition is called alkalosis, right? Alkalosis. So every single day, part of my regime, I have about a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar in a glass of warm water. It doesn't have to be warm. I just make it warm because I find it easier to drink.
Is it the apple cider vinegar you just get off the shelf in Coles, or is
Yes.
it something that you have to buy with all the?
No, the one in Coles is
Okay.
fine, man. So I have one every single day to raise my acid levels and lower my alkaline levels.
Right. So 2 alkaline is no good. Now I heard that people that have cancer cells can't survive in an alkaline body. Is there truth to that?
No. Oh, look, I won't say no because I haven't read any papers on it. I don't know. I'd need to see more data.
So I heard the more acidic it was able to survive easier in a more acidic body, and so I thought that maybe a high alkaline diet would be good for helping suppress to control or slow down cancer. But it sounds like it's got effects as well from having too much alkaline.
Look, I know I'm not an expert on cancer, but I've read a lot of papers on cancer. I've never seen a paper that said having a high alkaline or high acidic level in your blood has a beneficial effect. So I know there is a ton of stuff on Google. The problem that we face with information at the moment is when somebody wants to research about anything, especially health, most people think that they just hop on Google and Google the question.
I'd be dead 10 years ago if I listened to Google, really.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, I could Google now and I could find 10 websites that would say you want more acid in your blood, and I could find 10 websites that say you want more alkaline in your blood. And guarantee they're all trying to sell products, right, to make you go one way or the other. So what I do is I don't do any research on Google ever. The only research I do and the only reading I do is in scientific journals where manuscripts that other scientists have written, the results from clinical trials, it goes into those journals. And before it even gets in there, there's a process called peer review where other scientists around the world that don't know who the authors of that paper are given to it. And they anonymously then have to look at that paper and then see if there's any errors in it and see if they can pull it apart. And they actually do, they rip it apart. So I publish papers in journals, and I can tell you it's a very frustrating, laborious thing because some professor sitting in some city that I'm never going to know who he is, he's never going to know who I am, and then he doesn't like the way I've worded something or something. It comes back to me. It goes back and forth 20 times before and then they publish it, right? So I only read scientific journals because it's the highest standard. But unfortunately, scientific journals and science, the way scientists talk to each other, is a foreign language. One paragraph contains 10 words that you've never heard of before. So, and this is where
Is that them just trying to show off? What is it?
It could be. It could be. Look, this is why I started it. This is a shameless plug, by the way. This is why I started my YouTube channel, because I think that scientists, they live and work in medical school faculties at universities, or they work for biotech companies, and they're around these other hardcore scientists all the time.
They can be worlds apart from people like
And
us.
they are so worlds apart, and I can see that the normal person out there that just wants to work and raise a family and work hard and stuff like that, but you couldn't sit them together at a dinner table and watch them have a great night together because they're so distant, right? And I think that scientists may have gone too far in that direction because
Hey, what's the demand scientists? You got to slow it down a little bit so we can all understand. And this is what you're doing. You're bridging that gap a little bit, right? So you're understanding the talk from science, and you're giving it in lame terms, for lack of a better word, for us to sort of understand. Watch those. They're great little videos, by the way. They're a couple of minutes long. We do them regularly, and there are lots of little bits and last. You can subscribe to that channel, by the way, on YouTube, which is called.
So it's called Science of Aging.
Science of Aging on YouTube.
And you might just need to put my name in there as well, Raymond Palmer, because a couple of other websites will come up.
Yeah. And then give that a subscribe and follow. I've been following them almost daily, every couple of days. I see them.
Yeah, about two or three weeks. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. We've got someone pushing back from you here online. He's saying, with advice from people over 100 years old, like a Japanese guy, 105 years old, saying milk is the key to living older, or the French old lady that smoked until her death at 109, or the Icelandic saying fish is the answer to living longer. Is your science and methods just novelty?
So it's a good comment you make. So there's a couple of things you want to know about. There are some places around the world where we have centenarians, people that live to over 100, right? And it is a lot of the time it's environmental, but some of the time it's also genetic. There is a group of Jewish people called Ashkenazi Jews, and they are resilient to cigarettes, red meat, all the things that could kill a Westerner by the age 60. They don't have the problems with, and we know why too, because when we sequence their genes, we can see that they've got a mutation on a particular gene. And I can't remember the name of the gene, but it will come into my head. And what they have is a mutation which tricks their body into thinking they're fasting, right? So that, and for some reason, that they are so resilient. But there's a couple of, but there's a lot of them. There's about 5 or 6, when I say a lot, 5 or 6 groups of people around the world. There's a group of people that live in South America, and they have a disease called Laron's syndrome, right? So they don't grow taller than this, but they also don't get any cancer, any heart disease, so any of these problems, right? So
That's like big people, like people that, for example, that speed up real quick, that have a tumor on their pituitary gland, they'll just keep growing and growing, they die young, they get frail, their bones can't almost keep up. But even just big people, they tend to not last as long. It's like they've got big hearts, you think that would work better because they're big, strong hearts, but it's like it has to overwork. Is that the case?
That's right. So there's not many bodybuilders, Mr. Olympias, these types of people that make it past 60. For some reason,
It's not steroid related, or could be.
It probably is steroid related, but we know that when you get older, you don't want to be walking around like the Hulk, right? Because the heart has to pump more blood through all that muscle, and you're carrying all that extra weight, and it's just extra work for the heart. So I don't know all the science on that, but the trend clearly shows that if you're carrying excessive weight when you're 60, whether it's fat or muscle, you will expire much earlier. But I just wanted to respond to your person that asked that question or mentioned that before. Even though somebody's man might be able to smoke cigarettes until she's 100, that everyone's got different genes, and what we see in science are what are called trends, where 98% of the population that smoke to 100 will die before they're 100. And then you have what we call deviations to the trends, and that's the old lady that did smoke. So everyone's looking at her going, oh, well, she's smoking until she's 100. Why can't I? Well, it's because you've got different genes. That's why. And she's probably got a mutation somewhere, which is preventing, like the tumor suppressor genes we talked about, they're in an on position all the time. And as she's aging, they're not getting turned off because epigenetic rift isn't kicking in the same as it is in other people. So, yeah, she's resilient. So there's 100 reasons why that might happen. So you can never, ever base your health of somebody else's health. But then it's okay for me because they're doing it, so I'm going to be fine too. Biochemistry doesn't work like that.
Okay, good answer. Thanks for that, man. We've got a question from the king of the US, so here we go.
You showed me this question, so I don't know if you answered it or not. But I was wondering, based on what the guy said about the people in Japan, and the people in France, people in Iceland, whatever, does ethnicity play play a part in someone's chemical makeup. I mean, I know we're all human beings, but we have some different things based on environment and diet from our ancestors or whatever. So does that play into any way that you do research differently, maybe for a certain group of people versus another group? Just a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So a lot of the human trials that are done around the world now have to take into account ethnicity, because different ethnic groups absolutely do.
Are we saying like Italians tend to eat olive oil and drink wine and then live to a ripe old age?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there are, what's interesting about genetics, right, is that people with stronger genes, those genes have more chance of getting passed down to offspring. And when I say stronger, it just could be a gene that means that you're not going to get heart disease from having an oily diet. Those people live longer. So those people produce more offspring, right? The people that died early from a heart attack at age 30 or 35, they can't spread their genes. So this is how nature and genetics works. So, and 100 or 200 years ago, families would have 10 kids. That wasn't a big deal. So we find that, a lot of the stronger genes would get passed down.
So are you saying like people, modern day person now is miles stronger than 5,000 years ago?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And I'll also say that, this is, a lot of people, I guess, don't know this yet, but I can tell you evolution is dead. Natural evolution and natural selection, that is where humans and species share genes, that is dead. That's gone forever. We've reached a point now where we don't rely on natural selection, which takes thousands of years to improve a species, really, right? But that's gone forever. Because,
what do you mean? How explain it to me?
Because we've got gene editing now. So what was
this is the CRISPR kit stuff that you're talking about with gene editing?
CRISPR, yes.
CRISPR, okay, so I was just literally going to ask this question next because, and let me sort of cut in so you can add it to this, is that you said that these people that smoke to 105, whatever, they might have that special gene or that particular Jewish race that had it, right? And you know what gene that is. By using CRISPR, are we able to take that gene and fixate it onto people?
Absolutely.
While they're already alive like us,
Absolutely.
or only when they're going to be born?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So Joe, I've got a friend in the United States. Her name's Elizabeth, right? Call her Liz, right? Because her name's Parrish. You guys can Google her if you're at home. Liz Parrish is her name. Liz, and I know Liz personally, she's a friend of mine. But we don't talk that often, obviously in different countries. But Liz Parrish has had her genes edited. She was one of the first people to do it, and she didn't do it because
Where's she from?
She's based in, I think she's up near Portland or something like that, Washington. No,
Okay,
in America.
okay.
She's in America.
Okay.
So Liz Parrish, I think she only had one edit done, but what she did, in your muscles, you have what's called the myostatin gene, and she had a therapy. So she took about 100 injections. A doctor injected her with 100 injections. Now, when I tell you what these injections inside this, right? Basically, there's another gene called follistatin, and we use a virus that cannot replicate. It's been genetically modified, can't hurt you, right? It's called an AAV virus, right? And that delivers the new gene into the nucleus of every cell. And so that's why she had to have over 100 injections over every muscle in the body. But now, she's the same age as me. Now her muscles will not waste away ever, because her muscles will continue to grow. So when she trains and when she's fit, it's like the muscles like she's a 22-year-old.
So because I think muscle decreases after about 72 hours or something.
That's right.
You go to the gym, you're trying to work it up, you're trying to break that muscle fiber to build big, but she'll never get small again.
She'll never become frail, not with muscles. Now you can do this with bone. There's a range of other things you can do as well. So this is why I say evolution or natural selection is dead. We no longer have to wait for nature to put in some random mutation which could hurt us or make us stronger. We just make them, we can do them ourselves. And I can tell you, gene editing clinics, they're going to be everywhere, just like Botox clinics are everywhere now, right? I mean, 20, 30 years ago, a Botox clinic was science fiction. Now there's probably 5 or 6 people doing it in every suburb, right? It's normal behaviour, and we don't even bat an eyelid. It's going to be the same with gene editing. You're going to go to see a geneticist at a clinic, and you're going to say, look, I want to have better muscles, stronger bones. I want to maybe have better eyesight. I'd like to have more cognition. I'd like to be able to process alcohol better.
And this is not far in the future. This is 10 to 15 years.
This stuff's you can do it in the lab now. It's just a matter of making it mainstream. So this is all coming.
Fantastic. We've got a message from Bra. So here we go.
then like a quick question about like the human race and stuff. Like you're saying that people now are stronger and probably better looking than people in the past. So like 200 years from now, like everybody could be like hot and shit and be like really strong and stuff. If we can just get all the ugly people to stop breeding.
Thanks, bro.
We're gonna raise a ton of money for our next startup. I'm gonna get all these people that we don't find attractive. I'm gonna genetically modify them. I'm only joking. But look, when I say we're more advanced than people maybe from 5,000 years ago, it would be very, very small amount because genetics takes a very long time to filter through and down. But there's no doubt that humans from say 100,000 years ago or 200,000 years ago, we're much more probably genetically superior than they were.
It's so funny that, and I guess this comes to the biblical days when I went to a Catholic school as a kid, right? And they tell you Adam and Eve are the two most pure people to walk the earth, right? Like they were pure from inbreeding. Well, not that I didn't say that, but you would think from the inbreeding that we've, not got that way. But yeah, absolutely. Thinking about it, of course, the strongest survivors that we've evolved to this point, and yeah, just on them before. I think we had a couple more messages come through. Yeah, we do. So it says. Is it possible to get a full screening for what genes are weak or strong and cater to them so your body is the most effective and efficient possibly? And going one step further, is it possible to accelerate certain human traits to effectively make a superhuman?
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely, you can make a superhuman. You can obviously, the ethics of that is people don't want you to do it to a baby, an unborn baby. They don't want people to fiddle with the genome of an unborn baby. But if you're an adult, they're your genes. It's your body. You know. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a protagonist for this. I think gene editing. If you choose to have stronger bones, stronger muscles, and and a healthier heart, and you can do that, and you can go to the clinic and have it on your medical insurance and pay for it. I don't think it's anyone's business. So I think
some say that it's like you're playing God, right? But at the end of the day, in 100 years or so, they'll be wiped out, and the strong people will be around anyway.
Well, that's right. And the other fact to that too is you could say the same about cancer. You could say, oh, you're not allowed to cure cancer because God put that in you, and you've got to get sick. I mean, where do we draw the line at how healthy and how well we want to be? So,
so how far away is it that we can be playing them? I mean, it's out, but till it's mainstream.
Joe, it's a funny question you ask. Well, when I say funny, it's because I'm focused at the moment on this therapy to reverse the effects of human aging. That's all my energy is going into that. But we're ready. We can't wait to start up a company doing this because it probably wouldn't be run in Australia. You probably have to get on a plane and come see us in Thailand or somewhere like that because they've got relaxed laws there. You could do it there. In Australia, it just wouldn't let you do it. But would I stick modified viruses in my body to edit my genes to give me a physical edge and to make me healthier and stronger, even with the other therapies? I'd absolutely consider it. And it doesn't, because I know the science. I'm not scared of it. I'm kind of very
sure. When you have an understanding of it, there's less fear, right?
That's right.
You might not completely know the results, but I think they've been doing that with fish for a while. I mean, you can see that they've gotten the glow gene from a jellyfish and put it into like mice, and like half the litter of mice will glow in the dark. And kittens as well, I think they did too. Yeah, it's crazy, like glowing green and red.
I've got gene editing kit at my house, and I was joking with my partner, and I told her because she hates cockroaches. I told her that I was
used to be a woman.
Yeah, I told her that I was going to make cockroaches in the back garden glow in the dark, and I was going to find the nest and and use the modified virus to deliver a green jellyfish kind of bioluminescent gene into the cockroaches, so that when they're running around the back garden, they're flashing and twinkling at night. How nice would that be? Right?
And bigger claws too.
But you could do that. That's possible. You could do that. It's just a matter of getting it past the government and not getting arrested because they don't like you doing that.
All right, so we're starting to tell towards the end of the podcast. I just want to finish up the last part. We go back to the longevity. Tell me, what fascinated you to get into the longevity in the first place?
There's two fields of science that I'm absolutely fascinated with: astronomy and age reversal. I don't know why. I just have a natural predisposition for them, and unfortunately, there's not enough money in looking at stars. But there is if you can reverse aging, so that's why I'm only joking. That's not why. I guess I love the idea of the challenge. It's a really, really long road, and it's a lonely road too, man. It's a lonely road too, in the sense that like the Wright brothers, when they invented the first wine machine, everyone thought they were crackpots. Everyone thought they were stupid. So it's lonely. I don't tell people what I do for a living. Not in Perth. When I'm in America, it's much more relaxed there. I can tell people. As soon as I get in a taxi or a hotel, what do you do? I tell people what I do and what I work in, and they're like, "Wow, that's really cool." Because they've got things like SpaceX, Apple, Google. They're used to all these kind of things. But here, I've had people abuse me, complete strangers that I've just rubbed shoulders with at the bar, and within 30 seconds, they're swearing at me because they think it's just ridiculous.
Well, I dare say that we don't even really imagine, and of course there is, we don't imagine scientists that are doing leading edge things to be in Perth, right? Like we do imagine to be in the US, but just to back that up too, one of the world leaders in this field is David Sinclair, right?
That's right, yeah.
He's based in California.
He's based in Boston, Harvard University.
Oh, okay, East Coast, yeah. So he's Australian. He's like one of the leading, and who he is and everything like that as well. And to my surprise, they're kind of everywhere.
But this is why David Sinclair, who's a professor at Harvard, he's a professor in age reversal. His approach is vastly different than mine, by the way. He had to leave Australia to really get traction and really do what he wanted. And this is why I had to leave Australia for this project, not permanently, but to run the project and get it done. This is unfortunately not the landscape for biotech, and I really wish it was. I mean, I actually met the Minister, Greg Hunt, the Minister for Health, before the election. I went to Sydney and I sat with him in his office, and I tried to explain things till I was blue in the face of how ridiculous the regulation is here. And the problem is that ministers and people that run government departments have never run a company. They've never built a company. They don't know what the regulation they're bringing in is doing to companies. They don't have any expertise on raising money or even attracting foreign investment. They don't have any of those qualifications in their resume. You say to a minister, "What have you done for a living?" They say, "Well, I had a law degree for 10 years. I practiced law now, and then I went and became a minister." So I said, "But you're writing all the laws of how entrepreneurs like us have to function in." "Oh, yeah. So it's a shame, and I don't talk to ministers like that. And look, some ministers are great and do a great job, but when I sat with Greg Hunt, it was unfortunate. We had a great conversation, but he was not changing legislation to help Australian companies stay in Australia. And I said to him, "That all the jobs, all the money, all the benefit goes overseas." I said, "You call that?" He says, "Oh, this is what we've got to work with." That's kind of the mentality.
In that voice too, that's pretty good impersonation.
Yeah, that's right.
Mate, I want to, before we do end, I want to see if you can give the audience some information about the benefits of fasting and how that helps towards the longevity as well.
Yeah, sure, man. So as I mentioned previously, fasting slows down cell division, but it also does a lot of other things too. So when your body thinks it's starving and when it thinks it's experiencing a time of famine, it doesn't have the resources, right? It has to keep feeding cells. So it says, hey, we've got to purge all these dysfunctional cells. Because if there are cells sitting in your tissues that are dysfunctional, if there's cells that aren't doing their job, if there's cells in your body that are not required, when you fast, your body purges them, it gets rid of them, right? If you're eating all the time, your body keeps them because there's an abundance of food. And those cells that are not necessary go on to cause disease. We know this. These are called senescent cells. And there's a video on my YouTube channel, Ray Palmer Science of Aging, shameless plug, that you can look at about senescent cells. But the fasting also gives your stomach, gives everything a time to clear out as well.
So it burns all defective cells.
Everything, and but also things like the liver can regenerate because it doesn't do anything for 10 hours. So instead of processing all the foods you're chucking in there all day long, up until you're eating a pack of crisps at night when you're watching a movie, then you go to bed, you wake up 7 hours, and you have your coffee, your breakfast, you're eating all the time. The organs really get to regenerate. So it's really, really healthy for that as well. But interestingly, what we find is two things accelerate intelligence: lack of food and cold, right? Lack of food and cold, right? So if you lived 5,000 years ago and you lived in a cold climate where food was scarce, if you weren't ingenious, you were going extinct. You would die, right? So people that lived in cold climates, and we see this through Europe, and we see some of the civilizations that forged in Europe compared to some of the people that live in these balmy, hot tropical islands. The inventions, the technologies came from the colder climates than the hotter, kind of equatorial islands we see dotted around the world. This is why. So we know that cold and lack of food increases intelligence. So if I've got an exam or something to do, or if I've got something which is really important where I need to be on the board, if I'm trying to solve a complex problem, I do not eat. I don't eat, and I'm going to say something which you're going to laugh at. It's I even try and be cold too, so I just take my. I have a standing
Well,
up.
this is what people talk about ice baths and cryo chambers,
That's
right?
exactly why they do.
How often should you be doing that?
So I cold shower. In the winter, I don't cold shower every day. But in the winter, when I get in the shower, I use a bit of hot water, and then I turn the hot water down slowly until it's just freezing cold. Now, when you first try this, you're going to be horrified, and you're going to ring me up and abuse me because it doesn't feel nice. But this is a thing called hormesis, or hormetic theory. So what hormesis is, when you stress the cells and you stress the human body, magical things happen. And you do all these things. You increase intelligence, you increase health, immunity, intelligence, a range of things. But hormesis is this. Logic would suggest that if you ate as much food as you wanted and just laid on the couch all day long and you didn't stress your body out and you just ate whatever you wanted, all the nutrients you could possibly imagine, you'd be the healthiest person on the planet. That's what logic would suggest. But the exact opposite is true. When you fast and exercise, lift weights, ride a bike, and do all those things, and you stress the body instead, you become super healthy and super lean and super mean. So
My dad just said the same thing. So he's sort of semi-retired and he had a couple of years off work there. He was busy with he had some birds, so he keeps himself occupied. But he started going back to work, and we had these talks because I was doing a lot of online stuff. I wasn't working as much with my hands-on job, and I was talking about how my memory seemed just terrible. I feel like I've got a terrible memory. He was sort of going through the same thing, except he's a little older than myself. And yet now he's gone back to work, and he says he's feeling sharper about it, and his thinking is better again. And I guess that's just using your brain at least as well, instead of letting it chill out, relax. Like
absolutely.
It's not the case.
Yep.
Okay, mate. So we're going to just because of time, we're going to run out there, but we have a message from Bulls over in the UK. He says, just a quick comment. Don't think I've received so much scientific info in such a short amount of time. Massive kudos to you both. My mother loves telling me to go fast. I guess I'll have to go. He's 6'11", by the way.
that's awesome, man.
Appreciate that, Bombastic. And if anyone has any final questions from the audience before we wrap up, let us know. I just want to start to close out the podcast. And mate, where can people find you on social media, YouTube channel, and your book?
Okay, so please follow me on Twitter at Ray D Palmer. You can find my book on Amazon, The Anti-Aging Toolkit. You can obviously find it on YouTube, which is Science of Aging, and you'll need to stick my name in as well to find that. And I've also got a website, which is scienceofaging.life.
Fantastic, mate. Thank you. I just want to give a special shout out, a massive shout out to the Comedy Lounge in WA here in Perth. You see the signage behind us here. They have done a fantastic job. Jamal out there, and to Penny Lane for taking care of the mic.
Thanks, Penny.
Thanks to the audience for coming. Give yourselves a round of applause as well. Raymond, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And you can use the Rocstedi podcast for all the platforms. My link tree is around there somewhere. You can find it, and you will see. YouTube's important. Twitch. You go to my Twitch, give us a follow there. Rumble as well. We're going to be doing some shows on Rumble coming up in the future. Mate, any last final thoughts or words for us before we close?
I thought you were going to say any last requests.
Yeah, what did you want me to sing?
I don't know. What can you sing, man?
Oh, yeah, everything.
Yeah, I was good, brother.
Just let me know. I can sing a whole heap of stuff.
Oh, do that one, yeah.
I've got copyright music. I can't start playing more than that. But thank you very much. Thanks to those that chimed in from the US. I know it's early where you are, and from the UK. There's a couple of guys there, so it's midday. Thanks for listening to the Rocstedi podcast. We'll see you again here at the Comedy Lounge in a fortnight. Next, we'll tell you who the guest is going to be, and I'll do another podcast during that time on TikTok and online. But thank you, mate. Thank you very much for coming, brother.
Mate, my pleasure, man.
Applause, guys.